Welcome to another edition of Discord Voice Notes in the chat community with your fave, marieshadows, which I just incorporated my IG into this, and that was like a really cool opening. This is Captain's Log 003. This is volume 3 of the Discord Notes. I do not know how many Discord notes you guys are going to get today, but here is an update of what has been happening over the past week, even though I've been like not really losing days, but sometimes when you're just so focused and being online all the time, it doesn't really help. Even though I do go outside and take walks and feel the sun on my skin and get some much needed vitamin D, and I think that everybody on Twitter needs to do that, especially in the wrestling community, man, because it has been one hell of a week. I guess a week. It's been one hell of a sandstorm, even though my brain wanted to say shitstorm, but you get it. You guys get it. So here are some updates. We had I'm just gonna start right. You see, it's been so chaotic that even I can't get my words straight, which is totally okay. We're gonna leave that in there. We're gonna keep it rolling. We're gonna keep it going. Um, if you hear stuff outside, that's because the motorcycle decided to pass on by on the street. Um, So for last week and for the events that I can remember, uh, we had a agent come on to the scene into the wrestling space, Nick Lo Piccolo, which I hope I have said his last name right. If anything, we're gonna nickname him Piccolo, like from Dragon Ball Z, because I was like, oh, that the last name looks oddly familiar to Piccolo, but it's Nick. Nick basically is a no bullshit kind of agent for Peregrine, which I think I probably mispronounced the agency that he works for, but that agency basically, uh, excuse me, signs a lot of athletes, authors, big name people, and basically they become representatives. So if they need some type of bookings or anything like that, they basically get the athlete, the writer, whatever, whoever is on the list, bookings and stuff like that. So that's what he does. He's an agent. He signs the best and he has a really good clientele under his belt. And while, yes, you can say that it's mainly WWE and that's going to show his bias, maybe those are the contracts that he wants. Maybe those are the contracts that they're giving him. Who knows? Like, I don't understand this need of the IWC, the Internet Wrestling Community, the ones that hide behind no profile picture, anime profile picture, wrestler profile picture, and then also have a name with a bunch of numbers or one letter and a bunch of numbers, the burner accounts, the people who aren't real. I don't know what their obsession is to have equal balance, but yet then tell you that AEW is the best and the be all end all, and you better love AEW as much as they do. Because for the majority of these arguments that these people or bots or whatever or both are having with Nick on Twitter, on the Twitter timeline. And by the way, Nick has some really great comebacks and some really great like slapbacks as well too to these people, and they can't handle it. They really can't. That they can't handle it when they start going after family members, even though it's like a joke that he had put on, just to be like, ha ha ha. It's not even that serious, but like that they lose arguments when they have to make it about family, when they have to make it about race, when they have to, throw in some sexual innuendos and, mention sex this and sexuality and porn. And this goes across the board because there's also another conversation that I want to talk about. But keeping on with like the Nick part, again, Nick is clapping back at all these fools, and I'm just loving it. I really am. I'm loving it to the point of even like I was fangirling and marking out just because he was like, "Oh, I'll listen to your episode." Because again, Metzler also gets into it and whatnot and tries to disprove Nick, and it's like, if you don't know somebody that just comes in with all this confidence, don't try to tear them down to be like, I'm the big dog here in this yard, because there's always going to be someone bigger and tougher than you, and they're going to knock you down. And, we all love a day where, Metzler gets to be put in his place because he needs to learn. And I just shared my podcast episode that I did, where for 7 weeks he was crying for an apology, but never asked me for an apology, and he's still never going to get an apology, about the whole New Japan thing and the whole thing about Chris Charlton being suspended and stuff. So basically, yeah, so I shared that because I'm like, I did the same shit too. And Nick said he'll take a listen to it when he gets back to LA, and obviously he had safe travels back to LA. So, we're all getting in on it because after a while you feel very tired of these bots. You feel very tired of AEW, maybe Tony Khan, maybe someone in the background hiring bot farms and paying a lot of money, or even maybe, I don't know, creating a Discord where they all have a meetup and they're like, hey, I need you to take this account, this account, this account, and go harass people. Now, also on Twitter, I did put out a tweet where I'm trying to reach out to Elon Musk about like, hey, you need to change the TOS of Twitter/X because it's really like unfair that, we can have this harassment happening with the bots and nothing happens to these people. And this is what happens when we create the internet to be so big, so large that we can't really keep it under control. So I think that it will be very beneficial and very plausible that Twitter/X can have something in the TOS that if you create a burner account and or bot account, that should be an insta banned. And the only way that Twitter/X will know about it is if you previously got banned. However, I do know that there are people that will just mass report, mass report, mass report, mass report, and it will be a fake and horrible reporting just because they don't like your opinion, and that shouldn't stand. If they don't like your opinion, that's one thing, keep it scrolling. But no, everybody wants to be coddled, everybody wants to be a toddler, and the cycle keeps going. Nobody learns anything, there's no accountability, but they will yell at you if they think that you are doing like cultural appropriation, or they will yell at you if like you use the word retarded in the slang version of like stupid, which we had back in the 90s. They will get mad at you if you point out things that burst their bubble. But the moment that you have just a straight opinion, and when I say a straight opinion, meaning like a wrestling fan could just have an opinion of that they enjoy big men wrestling, and someone could be like, no, that's not cool, you have to like all wrestling, you have to like all styles of wrestling. I am going to go into this Discord, which I'm just making this up, who knows if there is a Discord where they all meet up. There probably is a Discord where they all meet up and be like, do you guys see this tweet? I need you guys to report this. And someone in the group should be like, why should we report that tweet? There's nothing wrong with it. But they want to do it because they don't like the opinion of someone saying that they enjoy big men wrestling, rather than saying they enjoy all men wrestling. Like all the styles, all the body shapes and everything. Like, these people are very lonely. These people have a power to them in a way, even though I say that no one has power over you, which is true, no one does. You can still do as you wish, but this is what happens when we take bullying out of the real world in a way, even though it's still here, and put it into the digital world where no one can be held accountable for it and nobody gets punched in the face, and everyone just lives in different parts of the world, and you're not going to go and take a plane over there just to just teach them a lesson of like, hey, you don't do that. There's no putting respect back into society when we have a big open internet and anybody can do anything, and people just don't give a shit, and they're going to go to bed very nicely and soundly, and you're going to be here upset over them, and they're not going to give two shits about it. So, that's something to really think about. That's like the bigger picture, and it's so sad. So yes, going back to the Twitter thing, I tagged Elon. I'll probably tag him so that way he could see this, or even just see a new tweet that, I'm all for freedom of speech, but I am not for freedom of harassment. And when you call out these bots, these AI people, and the fakest people around in the IWC, and you're like, this is bullying, this is harassment. They are going to move the goalpost. They're going to say no. They're going to like call you all names in the book. They're going to try to rage bait you, and they're going to be borderline racist with undertones of being racist. And then if you call that out, you're the bad one. And then people will pile on to make you feel like the bad one. And then it's like, do you guys not realize that this is exactly what you guys fought against so many years ago, but now it's in full force and you don't really give a shit about it? It's like there are real people behind some of these accounts. There are real people trying to do business, trying to network, but no, you guys want to keep it in a gate kept community, but you still want people to join. Like I don't know. Either way, this is the first voice notes. This is voice notes number 2. Let's get back to Nick. Nick, like I said, doing awesome, awesome clap backing. And I'm so glad that Nick ended up taking a bunch of screenshots and basically formulating a little mini case, because it is really ridiculous that these bots and these people will have all this time on their hands to try to dock somebody and do it wrong and bring up police reports that are not the person. And if the person has to keep saying like that's not me, while other people are trying to push a really bad narrative to ruin a man's reputation and nothing gets done about it on Twitter, it's like, I am thankful that we get to have the First Amendment on Twitter. That's the only thing that I'll give like Elon credit for. But ever since it was announced that the CEO, who was a woman that was working alongside Elon of like in Twitter, she decided to leave Twitter and not work with Twitter anymore. And I'm here like, as much as I want Elon to sort of change the TOS and add in a clause so that way nobody could create a burner account anymore, it's like I don't know if he was ready to buy Twitter, if he still acts like a child just based off of the tweets over the past like months just in politics and whatnot. And I really try not to talk about politics. It's just that it is so ingrained everywhere, which is super, super annoying, especially ingrained in wrestling. And that's why I decided to do the new podcast episode that I have under the Square Circle Podcast banner. And where basically it talks, stop telling women about, well, it's basically stop selling women the idea of equality, because it is so fake, it is so bad, and all of the fake feminists and the fake male feminists, like, they don't really care. They don't know what's good for females, both male and female across the board. Like, I honestly think that as a human being species altogether, we are still learning about ourselves. We're trying to live a life. We're trying not to chase trends, but people chase trends because that's where they feel the most comfortable. Sometimes the things that we deal with don't have explanations. We find stuff to attach ourselves to. We basically move at 100 miles per hour because society moves at 100 miles per hour. There's no like slowing down in a way. If you slow down, people think that you're lazy. To a certain extent, people can be lazy and people can procrastinate, but because we're getting fed so much information in such short amount of bursts, especially when you're scrolling on your phone, that tends to affect mental health and whatnot. Like, we have been going so fast that if we ever decide to slow down, it's not going to end well. It's going to be like a really bad train wreck. Um, but yeah, so I guess getting back to the whole Twitter thing for a quick second, I just don't think that it is very good to have these people create more burner accounts. Because before I get into the podcast, I think that might be the next like voice note. Before I get into like talking about the podcast and adding some more context to it, and this is a companion to that. For some odd reason, just because, you know, you have a disagreement with people and maybe it turns into an argument, it does not mean that the bots that have like 3 followers with like 20 following or 00 and they just created it in June, like we see you guys. We're not stupid. We know those are burner accounts, and we know they're run by the same person, because if I'm not talking about the Voldemort of the IWC, which if you can't figure it out, I don't know. But if you say his name, he vanity searches, which is like 90% of people on the IWC, including wrestlers like Ricochet. But either way, the Voldemort of the Voldemort of professional wrestling and the Voldemort of the IWC. Let's just put them together. If I don't name drop Mr. Voldemort, then why are you bringing Mr. Voldemort into conversations and on response tweets to my tweets? And then also as a burner account, because you don't got the balls to do it on your main account, to be like, if you weren't so toxic and a know-it-all because you don't know everything, and if you weren't holier than thou, people will like you more and you'll get more followers. Do you really think that I created social media to get followers? You know, I love my community. I love the fans that end up following me. I love the conversations that I have with the fans that follow me, with the community that I create, and I call them friends and I know them by name. I do not know them by a number. I know them by name, and I know them by their personality and their quirks before anything else. And I think that's a testament to the way that I build a community, rather than treating them like stupid idiots, like most of the journalists in the IWC who just want their money. Like, listen, I want money too, but I also would love your friendship, your company, your conversation. And I'm hoping through the content that I produce, and if you find it valuable enough, that you can get a subscription for like $6.50 a month, or even for the first month, like $4 and some cents. Or if you want to go the $1.99 route on youtube.com/Square Circle Podcast /join. I basically make a lot of different options for everyone that follows me, because you never know what happens in real life. Real life is obviously going to take priority over content creation or watching your favorite streamer, your favorite content creator, because life is life. Like, that happens. Like, we can't really control that. And then sometimes budgets are tighter one month versus the other month, which, by the way, if that's the case for you as a viewer of the Square Circle podcast, the Crossroads series, and just the Marie Shadows brand in general, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee, which is just a tip jar. I am so sorry. I have no idea where a really loud sound was coming from, so I ended part 2 on a like, whoa, what the fuck. So this is continuation of part 2. I just have to remind myself that. So yeah, if you as a viewer don't have the means or the budget to support monthly, there's also a tip jar that you could give like every once in a while when you can, if you feel that my content is, of value. And I think it's of value, and it's very thoughtful, and the way that I talk about things and put things into a perspective. And I don't try to do gotcha moments. I don't try to do, let's talk about this idiot, let's talk about this clown. Did you see what this bot said to me? Did you see this drama over here? Like, I don't do any of that stuff, because we are not elevating other voices in the community. We're not elevating other thoughts in the community. We're not elevating our conversations around us and what we could achieve. And, we're not elevating the wrestling promotions and stuff like that. We're talking about drama for the sake of drama. And I understand that in the internet climate, drama sells the same way like sex sells. Like, I get that, but that's not me. And I'd rather us have something thoughtful, something educational, something like that. there are some times behind the scenes that I don't mind listening to drama. I don't mind, talking about drama if I'm with like my family or friends or whatever, because drama follow us everywhere. It's a spectacle. It's part of life, unfortunately. But to bring it into the content, then how am I going to stand out if I ever show my portfolio to potential employers in the wrestling business or just, collaborations and whatnot, right? Like, you have to understand that as a content creator, one of the biggest life advices that I could give is that the way you make your content, the way you act, and also the way you build up your community is a reflection on you, and what you put out to the world is what you get back. I hope that people have heard that phrase before of like the the energy that you put out is the energy that you receive. So if you're basically an asshole content creator, you're gonna get asshole fans. And those fans are gonna go and like bother other people that, may wanna check out the content, but they're going to be assholes to them, and then you lose a brand new fan that could have been converted to a very loyal fan and like buy the merchandise, support you in memberships and all that stuff, and support you in super chats and whatnot. So that could be that. If you're a kind-hearted soul that tries to understand stuff, try to be neutral, try to give you a different perspective, which I'm describing myself, and then also give you my experiences in the wrestling business, firsthand accounts on stories, and like being hands-on with everything, which again I'm describing myself. um you know I want to bring in people that are similar, um to that, but also understand that they want to understand wrestling a little bit more and follow the journey, and and thank me for my time for going here, going there, creating this, creating that. I will be right back. Okay, this is still part two of the voice notes. It's just that, people are texting me. My point being is that the energy that I put out is the same type of people that I want to cultivate and, just be a community. But this is where I would have to say that not everything that I produce can be free. I've done a lot of free content. Sometimes I don't know how to talk about grabbing a membership, grabbing merchandise. I really don't know how to talk about it because I never really had the chance to talk about it. And I just don't know how to talk about it. And that is something that content creators deal with. Some other people could be very nonchalant about, no, guys, you don't have to buy. It's okay. They'll play up like the puppy voice of like, no, you don't have to. And then like when they, when people do, it's like, but they're also working like on the side. Those content creators do this as like a side hustle, a side hobby for content creation. I do this 24/7 as a full-time gig, and sometimes it's difficult to ask for help. It's difficult to ask for, hey, you could just get a simple account, not really an account, but like a simple membership, or buy some merchandise, help me out. Like, it's the small little things that count, but I don't know how to talk about it to get my community to do that. And I'm talking about it on like a bigger, grander scale because I know not everyone is in the chat community Discord. Everyone that I know is spread out between Twitter being home base, and then also on YouTube as well, and even on Spotify. Okay, so I'm just gonna wrap up voice note number two, which is the three above, because again, text messages in the afternoon about stuff. So this is why like I'm putting out like shorter voice messages. And again, if you're listening to this full thing on Spotify, YouTube, and or Substack and or Fourth Wall, it's because yeah, text messages and stuff. Oh yeah, I'm doing this in the Discord. This is Discord voice notes. I am sort of forgetting like my place and like what I'm talking about. But just to wrap up voice note number two, So at the end of the last one, I was saying that like I don't know how to talk about like, hey, please go grab a membership. I am very nice about these things, and this is why I think that I will be forever poor. And this is me just being real with anyone that listens. And it is very difficult to ask for like, hey, can you get a membership? I try to keep all money for like memberships at a very reasonable price for budgets, and while other people can like just easily get it no matter what. And that's just me just being honest. And if that gets weaponized against me, it gets weaponized against me because, like I said, bots and burners, those type of accounts on Twitter and everywhere else online, they don't have the balls to do what I do. They don't have the balls to do what anybody else in the community does on a daily basis, to create content, to do something, to get out of the machine, not to be a cog in the machine, because I want to pursue a journey a different way than somebody else. Like I said, there are different options to choose from. There are monthly memberships, and then there's a tip jar. If you do not have the means to commit to a monthly or even a yearly subscription to Substack, because Substack has it, Fourth Wall has it, um, YouTube has monthly memberships. I don't know if they would ever implement a yearly membership. Like, I think that would be pretty cool to do. But just know that, like, with YouTube, I don't know how far I can, like, peel back the curtain, but YouTube has a threshold of $100 to take out, to finally be like, oh my God, I made something that I can like at least cover something that like I need. But yeah, like that bothers me where like the threshold is $100 to take out. If anybody wants to help me with like YouTube stuff, let me know. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that because that bothers me. It's not like Substack where like if somebody was to subscribe that, I'll get that money a couple days later and stuff like that. Of course, these companies have to take their fees, and then there's extra fees on top of that, which is really super annoying. Um, Fourth Wall just takes like 10%, which I'm cool with. Substack takes 10%. YouTube does the whole 70-30 thing. And I think Buy Me a Coffee also takes like a percentage, maybe like 10% as well, which is not that bad. But yeah, like their options, I always try to think of the customer's budget. And I always try to give discounts as much as I can so that way it can entice people to purchase uh original merchandise, because I really do think that it is very, very, very criminal to charge a shirt $30 just so you can make a really high profit. And all it is just a small little drawing or whatever it is, like on the pocket side of the shirt. It's not even like a big blown up kind of drawing or logo like in the middle of the shirt where it's like, hey, I want people to notice. Like it's right at the pocket of the shirt. You know what I mean? Like those shirts that you see other content creators do, and you're like, who will pay $30 to $35 for that shirt? you know I try to pick things and create things, and that are of like really good value and a really good like uh warehouse amount of money, because this is all coming from like a warehouse, so like you pay what it'll be for like in bulk, and then you put your price on it, and then like depending on the fees taken and stuff, like you'll know how much profit you make. And I try my very best to make sure that someone could buy one of my t-shirts for $20, and I'll make really low amount, even though to whoever hears this isn't me trying to like lower myself, because it does sound like I'm lowering myself. This is me looking out for the customer to hopefully build up the rapport and be like, hey, she does a lot of good work. Let me go buy something that's like $20. That's like $10, $8. And I also do it too because Fourth Wall tends to have like really high shipping fees for some reason. Depending on where you are, like I don't understand why they have really high shipping fees, but yeah, I do it to try to balance out so that way you don't feel like you're getting ripped off. The last thing that I would want is for fans to feel like they're getting ripped off of like my merchandise that's not even like high quality standard of like what I put the pressure on myself to create. And I think, yeah, I think this volume 3, this needed this conversation about memberships, about money, because again, those bots tend to weaponize things when they don't like you, and they weaponize it to try to keep you small, to keep you in this box. And it's like, I'm not going away. You can go away because you're a burner and you're a bot, but I'm not going to go away because I am not quitting. There is no quit here. I love this too much. I love my community too much. I love building things. I love becoming something different within the community that gives a different perspective, that basically, could put out a different type of content that's not the same content like everybody else. Everybody else can interview the same wrestler. You guys are going to ask the same questions. Me, I could interview somebody else and ask different questions, or, decide to do a panel, or to decide to do a breakdown and be like, hey, do you mind if we watch this together and let me know your thoughts, or something like that. Like, you can look at things, take it and like twist it and make it your own. But the moment that you ask for help, because yes, I'm still in overdraft. The moment you ask for help to get you out of an overdraft, it gets used against you, and that is so sad. But when a wrestler ends up getting hurt and they have a GoFundMe, they get $50,000. I'm not trying to say one is wrong, one is right. I'm not trying to divide anybody. I'm just like, yo, you got to think about that. These burner accounts will silence anybody they don't like. But the moment a wrestler is like, hey, I don't have health insurance, which I think that should be a Crossroads editorial, or even an interview series of asking, like, how come wrestlers can't get health insurance? They should be able to get health insurance on like the lowest of the lowest tier. Just because, like, they're like a freelance worker, they should still be able to like get accepted into getting healthcare. But that's like a whole nother freaking thing that needs planning and real deep conversations. But like I said, the moment that a wrestler is like, oh hey, I have a GoFundMe because I got hurt on the indies, and the promoter is not like taking care of it, or trying to take care of it, or trying to go half and half, or whatever the fuck, um they get whatever they need. But when someone just asks for like a quick, hey, can you get me out of this hole? Can you help me with this? It's like, I'm the worst. If I was nicer, I'll get the help. But what does that truly mean? Like, what does it truly mean to tell me to be nicer? What does that mean? Is the bot slash burner in question that weaponizes the really insignificant shit against you, are they going to be nicer? No, they're not. They're going to say the same shit talking points to me that they're going to say to you, but they're going to be like, oh, you should be nicer. You shouldn't be smarter than everybody else. You should not be holier than thou. How dare you think that you're smarter than everybody else? How dare you this? How dare you that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. And trying to figure this out is really annoying on all levels, because burners and bots shouldn't exist. But like I said, we created a big ass internet where we cannot control what happens on the internet unless like you contact, FBI or like cybersecurity or something, to just see where these IP addresses end up, and then maybe we could bring back some common sense and some respect to people and whatnot. I just think it's really unfair that, like, if people ask for help, right? We have this whole epidemic of, they say that you are not alone. No matter what you're dealing with, you are not alone. Make sure you reach out and please ask for help. Okay, somebody does that because they feel trapped, they have a darkness over them, and they don't know how to get out, right? So they go and reach out. They're like, I need help. What does the internet do? Depending on, I guess, the time of day and the time you post and the video that you make, and as like sympathetic as you can get, you may end up getting the help. Now we're going to take those same attributes that I just mentioned, the time of day, the time you post, maybe if you're sympathetic, maybe you are sympathetic, and you post, everybody will tell you some horrible ass shit, weaponize your problem for no reason, instead of trying to be like, hey, maybe next time, hey, I could get you in touch with this person, this is the best that I can do, or, whatever the case. They don't want to give you a little bit of an olive branch if you're the second, like for the second example of this. They don't want to give you a little bit of an olive branch, but they'll give an olive branch to somebody else who may end up being an asshole, and it gets revealed that they're an asshole. That's why sometimes the internet rewards assholes. And people who are nice, people who do speak their mind, people who do have strong opinions are the bad ones. And it's like, this doesn't make any sense, you know? Again, this voice note was definitely needed for, you know, talking about money, talking about memberships, talking about this. And again, like, I don't really know how to tell you guys to go get one. I was given really good advice by someone telling me, be a little greedy, and I don't really know how to be a little greedy. I know how to be confident and have a chip on my shoulder sometimes. And if I know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm talking about. If I don't, then you could teach me, but you don't have to be an asshole in teaching me. But to be a little bit greedy, I don't want to keep saying, "Hey, go get this. Hey, go get that. Hey, sign up for this. Hey, sign up for that." I do understand that people do not want to keep signing up for, a new account on Fourth Wall if they have a Patreon. But speaking of Patreon, Patreon takes a lot more money in fees, and creatively it doesn't have my vision for what I want for my work. This is why I have Fourth Wall, and then I feel like I have to over explain so that way people can understand. Because again, when I don't get any kind of feedback or engagement or being like, oh, I get that, I tend to over explain so that way someone can say something. Let me know if I'm like off the mark, on the mark, if I make sense, if I don't make sense, if you have any ideas about how I should talk about my merch, how I should talk about my memberships, and like all this kind of stuff. And I do understand that people have lives. I do understand that people have jobs. I do understand that people are not online 24/7. And I do understand that people have families and they want to go and relax with their family. I totally get it. I am just very thankful that the community follows me. I'm very thankful for the community to interact with me. And I'm very thankful that if anything happens, the community has my back. And I have the back of, the community as well too. It's just that sometimes we don't know how to talk about these things. And then I over explain, like I said, and I'm probably going around in a circle. But I might come back to visit this little section as with a clearer head, in a way, with a clearer mission statement. But if you want my damn honesty, like really raw and just like, this is how I think about things, these three, well, now four little mini voice notes, this is what it is. This is what the Discord voice notes is all about. It's about, like, it's my own fucking therapy to just be like, let's think about this stuff out loud. How can this help? How can this not help? What can I do here? What can I do there? How can I get people excited to know that there are memberships that are monthly and yearly? And how can I get people excited to know that there are one-time tip jars if like your budget allows it? Like, I give so many different types of options. But the moment that like somebody else tends to, show off their ass and being an asshole, it's like, yeah, Okay, well, this is gonna wrap up for that, and I'll go into voice note number 3. This is voice note number 3, and basically this whole entire voice note volume 3 is all over the place. We started off with talking about Nick and how I enjoy Nick's commentary on the Twitter timeline. I, talked about how we're all like going back and forth. When I say all of us, I mean like, with the bots, with Nick, with the stuff that happened on the Twitter timeline, and then my 4 little notes about stuff and memberships and money and all that kind of things. By the way, I should say this now that after volume 3, volume 4 will be behind a paywall. Like I said, not everything it's going to be free. I do have to look out for my financials. And again, I'm telling you guys, like, as honest as I can be. And if you appreciate honesty, all you have to do is just support. And every link in under the sun of like how to support me will be there. So yeah, volume 4, when I start it, will be under the membership section of the Discord of the chat community, and then I will release maybe like 1 or 2 into the voice notes, just so that way you guys can hear a little bit about what I talk about, but the rest is going to be behind a paywall. You'll get a summary over on Substack, because Substack is a newsletter, and that's the easiest way to like also have articles. But going forward, it's going to definitely be like summaries, especially if I'm going to be playing it on, well, not really playing it on Spotify, but playing it as like an ad, my own ad on Spotify. Because let's talk about Spotify for a second. Because I'd rather get this all out now rather than putting it behind a paywall and then like, it doesn't really get heard. Because my whole thing is that if I'm creating voice notes, if I'm creating a podcast, I want people to hear it, and I want people to engage in it, and I want people to talk about it, and I want people to leave a comment about it. But again, if you're an asshole leaving a comment, don't expect, me being very nice to you, because it's a way of showing your ass. Um, I have accepted that the monetization program on Spotify, it is not doable for me. I will never be a part of the Spotify partner program. Now, with that being said, in the world of wrestling, we say never, but to apply for the Spotify partner program, the numbers, man. So to apply, I would have to hit 2,000 people who streamed on Spotify in the last 30 days. Only 5 people streamed in the last 30 days. So basically what that means is that if you are part of, well, if you're following my show, the Square Circle Podcast, on Spotify, which I have 84 followers, and I love you guys. Thank you guys so much. The more you listen to my episodes, the more hours it's going to clock in. However, the thing is that the way that it measures it, I don't really know how to explain it to you guys. So hitting like, well, I need just 2,000 people. 5 people streamed it. I don't know how I'm going to get 2,000 people. When you're in a niche podcasting area, and if you're not producing like Chris Van Vliet, then I'm just like, I'm not getting into this program. The second thing to apply, the second sign option, hit 10,000 consumption hours. So that means that like people will have to consume my content for 10,000 hours. I only have 7 out of 10,000 in the last 30 days. And it's like, again, I don't have enough people to continue to listen to my stuff on Spotify. And again, this isn't like me putting this out there so people can weaponize this against me. It's about transparency and letting you guys know that these partner programs that content creators go into are not the most very partner program friendly to us, where we have to work overtime, triple time, double time, whatever you want to call it. We have to work harder than most in order to get something. This is why we always tell our communities, like, hey, if you want to directly support me for the content that I make, where we can sort of control the fees and all that kind of stuff, this is why sometimes people will drop like their PayPal link, their Cash App, their Venmo link, and then they'll drop like, the Patreon or the fourth wall, because that direct support helps us greatly, and we get to keep a lot of the money, and we don't have to go through this insane amount of loops just to get into the partner program. just so that way we can earn pennies, pennies on the dollar for ads and the premium video revenue. So it's like we work so hard to get pennies. And I'll tell you this, before Spotify got uh anchor.fm, because that was the original podcasting hosting platform that I've been on, and then they got switched over to Spotify. On anchor.fm, they were so generous to anyone that signed up. You automatically got the ads. That's why if you go back into my catalog, you'll notice that I put in at least like 6 ads, so that way I can get the ad revenue to cash out. And I'll tell you guys this, man, I will reveal this because, this is what it is. The last balance that I ever withdrew was back in 2023. That is before anything got switched over to Spotify. So with the percentage that they had to take out, I had $10, but because they took like 10%, I got $9.80 because these places always have to take their fees. But like I was able to at least cash out at like $10 every time that I made it to the threshold. This is why sometimes I don't think people understand that content creators are not as wealthy as you think they are. Sometimes they are if they're going to go live every single day hoping that like they'll get memberships and people will send them super chats and stuff like that. And then sometimes when you have a different schedule and you're working with one laptop between creating two different types of content, it sort of like varies on like what you get. So yeah, so Anchor was very great to us where they allowed us to put in ads, and whoever listened to the episode will get those pennies. We'll get it from the ads. And we were able to have like a little $10 in our pocket, get out of an overdraft because banks are the worst. And so the last requirement to apply for the Spotify partner program is publish at least 12 episodes. I currently have, over the past 6 years of having the Squared Circle podcast that started back in 2019, 403 episodes. So from 2019 to 2025, 403 episodes. So that is the only thing that is checked off. So again, I would have to have 2,000 people who streamed on Spotify, and only Spotify. So if you're listening to the Square Circle podcast on like Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, anything that's not Spotify, that does not get counted. And by the way, looking at my numbers, everyone seems to be listening to the Square Circle podcast off of Spotify. And if you're listening to this, just leave me a comment about like, why do you like other platforms other than Spotify? I'm just curious. It's not like I'm going to get upset. I'm just very, very curious. Spotify is like a hit or miss for people. I use Spotify for music because it's just there. It's convenient. But yeah, why do people choose to listen to the Square Circle podcast off of, well, other than like Spotify? I just want to know. I'm very curious. And then the next one was, hit 10,000 consumption hours, and it's only 7 out of 10,000. So I just want to be very, very transparent that I will probably never be in the Spotify partner program, because hitting those numbers is not very feasible. It's not very, it just won't happen. Because I'm talking about wrestling, and then I also talk about like, stuff on like Crossroads editorials, or do, the Discord notes, or, talk about, equality and women's wrestling and stuff. And it's just, streaming stuff is a little bit different. I don't have the same pull as Chris Van Vliet, and I don't have the same pull as everybody else, and that's just the way it is. But I love what I do, and I love the journey that I'm on, and I love, where I'm going and where I'm taking you guys with me on this journey. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more challenging, but I've never really wanted to cut corners. I never really wanted to do the same thing like everybody else. I never wanted to do that. I wanted to do my own thing, go to the beat of my own drum, and it's gonna be, an uphill battle. Everything is an uphill battle. If everything was easy and if everyone had the formula, it would be all boring, right? Like, I'm here taking you behind the scenes of what it means to be a partner in these programs that aren't friendly to us, and why the conversation of talking about money, talking about merchandise, talking about memberships are so hard for people that are just so used to, I'm talking about like me, that are so used to doing everything by themselves, creating on their own, thinking up the ideas on their own and putting it out into the world, hoping that there'll be some type of feedback coming back, some type of, conversation coming back, some type of community building coming back. Sometimes people pay for their stuff to get ahead of everybody, but I just do things like the natural, organic way and let things fall as they fall. The opportunities that I get may not be the opportunities that someone else gets. And being as honest and open, I think that this creates another layer of like, you know, whatever the bots say is definitely untrue, I will give you answers for things. You know, talk about advice and talk about what's within partner programs and this or that, if I can help, if I cannot help, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes I just wish that me putting this out there, people can respect it, give me a head nod, and in turn, there are options. Um, but yeah, I guess that's gonna be all for like the membership part, the money part. But again, it is very difficult to talk about money stuff, especially in a world where things are uneven, unequal, but people who want to control narratives on the online space, in the Twitter space, people who want to control narratives will tell you that they are all for equality and helping out every single person that they can. But if they don't like you, you're off by yourself. But then again, I've always been by myself. I've always been a loner. I've always done things on my own. It's just one of those things of like, now I'm creating a community. I'm bringing people in, and I know there's other people that feel the same way out there like I do. I'm just really expressing it, because you kind of realize that if you don't use your voice to talk about these observations, to have these conversations, and just want to blanket everything as everything is okay, they're getting money and blah 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 and trying to stop somebody. It's like, no, that's not good to do. So, I don't mind using my voice to talk about these conversations, have these conversations, because in my podcast episode, which now I'm going to talk about in the next voice note. Okay, last one. It should be the last one because then I have no other idea. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about the other thing on Twitter. Um, just very quickly, the other thing on Twitter. It is very sad to see when one of your buddies ends up, you know, I don't want to say ends up getting attacked, but that's what it is. Sometimes on Twitter, people just attack other people and they don't know that they do it in such a way where it's like racist undertones, because they don't go as hard as they do against your buddy, meaning MD. And I might get heat for this, but I don't give a shit. It's just borderline racist and borderline wrong. Like, if you think that someone is garbage or a piece of shit just based on internet interactions and the way that they talk, and they're in certain Twitter threads and stuff like that, and you don't like the way that they talk about women, it might not be any of your business. And that might not go over well with people. But it might not be any of your business because you don't know about the culture. You don't know about the way that people talk when, they live and grow up in the ghetto, in like, cities and whatnot. Like, most of these people that I interact with are not really from the suburbs. Maybe a handful are from the suburbs, or they moved to the suburbs. But, you can spot someone that's been in the hood. You could spot someone that's been in the hood, and You can, you just know. And it's like you have two white dudes going after one black guy for no reason. And I'm gonna say no reason because it's like the conversation didn't really include them in the other argument and whatnot. But the idea of that you're pushing so hard, you are making him little. I want to say belittle, but you're making him little just because he shared something that his family is successful and he's related to successful people. Well, okay, take it at face value. Why are you trying to put quotation marks around it to make it seem as if like it's sarcastic or to make it seem like it's not true? Take it at face value if someone tells you that they're related to someone, special and whatnot. And then to be like, oh, you think that makes you special. He never said that. He doesn't come across as, oh, it makes me special because my uncle did this or whatever. I'm just making it up. But like, if he says that his family is successful and, they do amazing things in the world, all right, cool. Thank you for letting me know. That's the information that I really can't go against because I'm not there with his family. I don't know his family like that. The same way like these two guys don't know his family, but they want to use it against him. And this is what brings me back to the previous statements of like they weaponize something so innocent against other people, and they do it in a very rude, backhanded, condescending kind of way. And then when you call them out on it, they want to move the goalposts. They want to give you a lot of empathy and sympathy and be like, I'm sorry that happened to you. Like it's that stupidity of like you want to be an asshole but you don't want to admit that you want to be an asshole, but then you are cheered by other people who are assholes but don't want to admit that they're assholes, but you're cheered by that. And then like I said a couple years ago, there was the whole campaign about stop cyberbullying is bad. And what are you doing to MD? You are bullying him the same way that everyone else gets bullied, and the same way that like there is no justification on either side. Stupid little arguments like shouldn't be happening at all, and then like it gets escalated because again these assholes want to be assholes. And then if you tell them you're an asshole and you show them exactly how they're an asshole and how they talk out their ass, they're going to deny, and then talk around in a circle, and then think that you want to be as successful as the TMZ of IWC. And it's like, no, we don't. This is what I was talking about before in I guess in my podcast that I was mentioning that like the whole equal opportunity bullshit. Like my journey does not mean that somebody else needs to have my journey. If you don't know what the person does for content wise, don't assume that it's just jealousy. Don't assume that like people basically making observations and talking about how they don't like certain things. It's not jealousy. It's basically pointing out like, hey, why does this fly? But then when someone else does it, it doesn't fly. Why are there rules for you, but not rules for them? Why can they break all the rules and still get all the love while you're here defending yourself and they're telling you that you shouldn't be defending yourself? Like, I don't understand that whole fucking shit. I really don't. It's like mental gymnastics. And then no matter how many times you try to end the conversation, they're going to keep going. And then when you tell them, why do you keep going? They're going to move the goalposts. They're going to be like, you're jealous. You don't get it. And it's a tactic that happens all the time in the IWC, and these people don't realize that it's not a good look. And then they want to be like they're productive members of society, and I'm like, no, you're not, because you wouldn't be going after a black man this hard. You wouldn't be saying things that is borderline racist to a black man. You wouldn't. Like, it's really, really bad. It really is, man. It's like, do you guys not know how you phrase things nowadays? And I really don't like bringing up racist conversations or what could be racist, what can't be racist. I really don't like doing that because it's one of those things where it's a slippery slope only because people get super, super emotional and they don't want to talk with logic and they don't want to look at stuff through critical thinking and like a context lens and whatnot. But like, man, just because MD has a way of, not having a filter. And I appreciate people who don't have a filter. I appreciate people who can be real with me and real with others and tell us things that we don't want to hear because that makes us better people. And, we all have our flaws. We're not perfect, but these two guys think that they're always perfect and they think that they have to be the moral police to police people that they deem to be pieces of shit. And it's like, how dare you put that at the forefront when you don't know this person personally? And I don't know MD personally either. But just based on our interactions, I'd rather have him at my cookout rather than someone who's a snake and who would turn on me and stab me in the back and then be like, oh, high and mighty, and be like, oh, you're not supposed to say that. You're a shit person too. Like, what? Like, if I just randomly said that, I prefer winter days over summer days, one of them is going to be like, how dare you? Every day matters or every season matters, like what? It's just really stupid that if you don't understand the culture, and when I say the culture, I mean hood culture, right? Because I'm from New York, I'm from the Bronx, I'm definitely part of hood culture out here, just because of like, how I live, where I live, and stuff like that. So I understand, and I talk to people in the hood, so I understand. I understand the stories, I understand what's happening, and sometimes, MD, whenever he posts on Twitter and whatnot, and I read his responses to some of those threads that he is in, and I go down a rabbit hole, and I'm like, yeah, justified because again, I know the culture. I know what's up in the hood. If you don't know the culture, don't try to really push really idiotic assumptions on MD or anybody else that's from the hood. To say that, uh, his responses are like childlike and that, he didn't have good parenting. Like, why are you assuming this man didn't have very good parenting? Obviously, you're not following everything on his timeline because you know what he does? He posts about his family. He posts about his nephew and how proud his nephew is, and he posts about the cookouts that he goes to. He posts about him going outside touching grass and wanting to buy cereal, but then he's gonna end up taking a nap. But then, he goes out and does what he needs to do. Like, to really tell somebody, oh, you had poor parenting. Your parents didn't parent you right. What gives you the right to say that about somebody, especially to an adult that you automatically deem as a piece of shit to society? Does that not make you a piece of shit too by saying that, oh, you never got parented right, or that you have childlike responses, or that the only thing that you're fapping to is porn, free porn on Twitter, and making everything about sexual and sexuality? Like, does that not make you a piece of shit? And why is that always the go-to gotcha kind of thing of like, let's throw in like some type of sexual thing in there, some type of sexuality? Like, can we like leave that in the past? We all want to be progressive in 2025, but there are still certain things that get brought up and it gets used as like a gotcha. I can understand that like if you were in the hood and it's the boys and they're cracking jokes on each other and one of them says something like sexual but it's in the form of a joke, like that's like the appropriate setting to have for that. But online, why 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 online do we make sexuality such a personality? Can we like stop that in 2025? Is there no way to be a normal human as a personality? Why does it have to be like sexual first personality and not, hey, I'm insert my name here personality? Like, why is it always, hey, I'm sexual personality, nice to meet you, versus like, hey, I'm Alex, and I'm a podcaster, hi, nice to meet you, personality. Um, like I don't understand it. Like that whole entire Twitter exchange, I was just really scratching my head about like these people think that they're smart. They're not smart. They think that they have gotchas. They don't have anything on people and they think that they have the power over people. And when you think that you have power over somebody the way that they were going, the as hard as they were going against MD, they think that they have power over him and it's like you guys really need to stop, back off, because the people that you're trying to defend from another previous conversation has nothing to do with you guys. And those people that you defend will throw you under the bus. The only reason why it hasn't happened because you guys are lapdogs and you guys are saying yes, master. That is what's happening. And again, this whole shit might make me get heat. The bots might come after me, but if no one is gonna tell you the truth, I will tell you the truth, even if you don't like it, because that's a form of bullying. That's a form of cyberbullying. And while MD can hold his own, it's still like you don't do that to another human being, knowing that he is a human being. Okay? The same way that we know that you guys are human beings, you guys wouldn't like it either, but this is what happens when the internet allows people to believe they have this power over others and they exercise it, but they don't want to take accountability for it and being on the wrong side. Now, again, there are no right or wrong here. I'm not trying to take MD's side. I'm just trying to present this problem to talk about it, to have a conversation about it. Um, I did come to MD's like defense and shit because, like, again, you can't be that stupid to be like, to have those responses towards MD. Like, you got to bring your A game if you're gonna try to bring MD down. Like, this guy. But it's just really, really wrong when you have two people to gang up on one dude just because you don't like him and just because you want to defend other people that probably didn't ask to be defended, you know, and that will throw you under the bus any chance they get. But like I said, when you are a lapdog and when you are a yes man and when you know, be nice, when you're, want people to be down at your level, they probably won't throw you under the bus because, they can control you. But what that manifests is what we saw, well, what I saw on the Twitter timeline of two guys attacking one guy to try to use their power because they're always bogged down by somebody else's power. So now that they have a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of that leash, they end up being like, oh, I got this power now. Let me go exercise it against somebody that they deem as a piece of shit. When in reality, they're not a piece of shit. If you don't want to talk to the person straight out to see where they're at mentally, to understand why they say the things that they say and all this kind of stuff, then, don't call them a piece of shit if you're not willing to do the work and actually, talk to somebody and see what they're all about. If all you're going to do is make judgments, then that's not going to help our community. MD could do what MD wants to do. It's his Twitter page, the same way like everybody else does. But the moment that you want to go and cyberbully a man for no reason, it's like it's the same way, man. It's a two-way street. Um, it's really, 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 really bad. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. And it's like the community just gets way worse, and then people want to be like, no, but I'm in the right. But then you're acting like the child that you're calling him, that he's acting like a child. But, you're not a child and you think you're right. And if you do think you're right, then how are you ever going to grow? But yet, they will send bots to other people and tell them, you should be nicer. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that. Well, you know, the internet. Okay, last. If you guys don't know, on the Square Circle podcast, I came back with a brand new podcast episode where basically again, you know, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Maybe I do know what it is, but I don't want to say it, but I don't know what it is that when someone like me that have these opinions, these thoughts, that I have these very, very strong opinions, I should definitely say that, don't agree with the vocal liberals on the other side. Again, I really don't want to bring politics into this, but it really needs to be said. When you don't agree and you've never really like agree, I never really put a flag in the ground. I just observe, I give my commentary, and I stand on business if I need to stand on business. But for the most part, when you live in a city and you're in the most diverse, one of the most diverse cities being New York City, but New York City is going to freaking trash right now. But back in the day before it became trash, we were very, very, very diverse. When you live in the city, you understand a lot of things. You understand different people because you have to learn how to tolerate them. You have to learn how to tolerate different religions. You have to learn how to tolerate different types of customers. If you're in like the fast food business, if you're in retail, and then the different communities and neighborhoods, because like I said, if you live in the hood, you have to understand how the hood works. If you don't live in the hood and you live in the high rises in Manhattan, you have to understand how that ecosystem works. And this is why sometimes on Twitter we sort of butt heads with a lot of people that grew up in the suburban area, in the gated communities, in the very sheltered homes, because they think that everything is a blanket. They think that everybody thinks the same way as they do. And they think that everybody has to have this 24/7 empathy and sympathy and understanding. And I'm like, yo, that's not how the world works. That's not how I work. I work a little bit different. I'm, an individual first. And I have my own thoughts and I have my own free will, the same way that you do. But if you're going to be brainwashed, you're going to be brainwashed, and it's not going to help you in the long run. I'm surprised that most people that are brainwashed nowadays are surviving. That's because they probably just take shelter in their home and don't do anything. But if you're not going to go out there, you're not going to talk to people, you're not going to gain any type of new cultures, any type of new experiences, perspectives, you're basically wasting your life away. Like, I love doing all that shit. I love talking with people, learning about different cultures, learning about different, what do you call it? Perspectives and stuff like that, getting to know people. Like, I love doing all that shit. I love talking about that. So this brings me to this. I am super tired of this whole entire narrative of that if you are a woman, you have to at least be feminist. And I'm also tired of the narrative of that, if you are a woman, you need to believe in equal pay, equal opportunity, and equal TV time. And I'm only tailoring this towards professional wrestling because the new podcast episode that I dropped is called Stop Selling Equality to Women, Give Them the Truth, and Thank Men. And I thought I would have never needed to make a podcast episode talking about equality, talking about giving women the truth, and thanking men. I thought like I would have never talked about this because this doesn't need to be in our conversations when we talk about professional wrestling. Everything that I do talking about professional wrestling has to have at least some type of kayfabe in it. But for some reason on Twitter and even in Facebook, that there is this thing of like politics have to be inserted into everything. And this is why I say that if you are a 19-year-old to maybe a mid 25-year-old who just happened to get into wrestling and you have these stupid ideas, get them out of your head. Because I don't want to sound very gatekeepy, but we don't need you. We don't need you guys to be 24/7 activists, and we don't need you guys to be like fake feminists and fake male feminists and want to be an ally and want to be this, but you guys never want to open up any type of like clinic or something to help out women, like truly helping women. You guys want to get on your phone, on your laptop or whatever, or go to a protest and scream, but you never want to do the actual work. Because if all you're gonna do is protest and you don't follow through, what was the point of the protest? I'm not trying to make this political. I'm really not. It's just really fucking annoying that like we have come so far in our society in 2025 that we scream progression, but we're still putting things into categories and still fighting against the system. But nobody is really being like, okay, well then let's sit down, create something, and let's, really truly be progressive. But no, in the same breath, it's like, hey, I want all these things gendered and categorized, but I also want you to believe in equality where everybody is on the same playing field. And it's like, wait a minute, but you want to separate it, but it's only when, like, women want their cake and eat it too. By the way, I am not anti-woman. I'm just anti over this shit where it's like there's no common sense in the world. There really isn't. It has fallen like so far. So anyway, the only reason why like I did the podcast episode is because Bully Ray's comments got shared in a Facebook group chat. I'm going to give my nuanced take, right? Because Bully Ray is not wrong. And as someone that worked in the business, and there are others on Twitter that have worked in the business, and they probably worked in, like, I'm going to call it co-ed wrestling promotions and even like all women's wrestling promotions, Bully Ray is not wrong. If you are a wrestler or a commentator or somebody that has a position in professional wrestling, whether that's like from the crew, from like doing the light rigs, from like interviewers, commentators, wrestlers, talent, if you are part of the wrestling business, the number one thing that you should really care about is getting the respect of the boys. And by the way, when I say the boys, I do not mean like just men. I don't mean like the physical attributes of the human being that we call a man that has a penis. Okay, I'm not saying that. When I say the boys, it includes everybody. It includes the whole entire team that makes the promotions and the entertainment you get when you buy your ticket. So when I say the boys, I'm talking about the team overall. I'm not singling out, a man. I'm not singling out that. So, if you work in the business, the biggest respect and achievement you should really strive for is what Bubba Ray said, right? What Bully Ray said, that the women are so good that they really truly do not need their own um pay-per-view per se. Okay, he's not against women getting their own pay-per-view. He's not against that. He's saying that, like, they don't really need it because the women already belong alongside of the men. So he understands that the women work hard, the men work hard. Men and women get these segments, they get they end up getting like the promos and stuff like that, they get what they get because it's for the sake of the story, it's for the sake of the business. But my point on the podcast was that men allowed us, women, to be alongside them. Men allowed us the space and the platform and the time alongside them to be a part of the wrestling business. They gave us a space. But wrestling fans who are 19 years old to 25-year-old, and even the older wrestling fans, the females that end up wanting to change sides and automatically change their brain and be like, women power, they want more. And it's like, what more do you want? Why do you want to completely exclude men? Why? And then I said something funny that, like, the moment that those women want to like completely exclude men, when they want to start a family, they'll find a disco stick, hop on that shit, get pregnant for like 9 months, have the baby, and have a family. And then eventually some of them will kick out the men. But like these pro feminists that get fed these lies to want equality, but only equality for them, and say that men are horrible. When they want to start a family, they end up starting a family with a man. My whole take on this podcast episode is about like thanking men and giving the truth to women, because I could not believe that after explaining my side and why I agree with Bully Ray's comments about, like, they don't really need a pay-per-view. They're good enough. They're good enough to be alongside the men. Um, and then explaining like the different locker rooms that I worked in, it got really stomped away by someone that I thought was a friend. And it was like, how do you dismiss my experience working in the business, working with both a co-ed locker room and even an all women's locker room, and being like, no, Bubba Ray is just sexist. Bubba Ray never gave any time, enough time to the women, and then also saying that like the Women's Evolution pay-per-view was necessary because it shows that women still need equal pay, equal opportunity, and equal TV time. And then I also didn't like the fact that there was a chick in there that basically used the phrase fragile masculinity. And it's like, it's 2025. I would have never thought that fragile masculinity will make its way into, someone's dialogue and speech. Because how is it fragile masculinity when Bubba Ray has shared the locker room with women, whether or not he was a booker? And this is the other thing too, is that like fans don't understand what it means to be a New Yorker, and the way that we speak, the way that we think, and how fiery we are, and that we pull no punches. This whole entire podcast episode of Stop Stunning Equality to Women, Give Them the Truth and Thank Men, I pulled no punches on this one at all. So if you have not given it a listen, give it a listen. But getting back to explaining what a New Yorker is, if we see that somebody that we're working with or a group of people that we're not working with, it does not matter if they are male or female. Let's just say that a group of people are not pulling their weight when they're working. We will say things that may sound to you as being sexist or sexism, because if you have a problem with Bully Ray, it'll be a lot easier to say I have a problem with him. I personally do not have a problem with him, but I do understand that like us New Yorkers, since we have no filter, it's going to come across as like something that you don't like. But if you're not going to question him, right, if you're not going to try to interview him and ask him straight out like, hey, you said this statement comes off as sexism. Can you explain your position? Most people would be fine if you asked them straight out, can you explain your position? Without having some type of backup agenda towards it, without having some type of gotcha moment. Most people will give you a straight up answer, but it's the internet and it's people that want to get ahead that will think of like, hey, I need a gotcha moment. No, if you just ask him about like, hey, can you tell me about this position? They will most likely do it. You know, him, anybody else, they'll do it. So yeah, let me start over with another voice note. I super lost count on how many voice notes, but I guess this is all needed for it to be free. And then volume 4 will definitely be behind a paywall in a way. So anyway, I said on this podcast episode that I do not believe in equal pay. I do not believe in equal opportunity, and I do not believe in equal TV time, because on paper it looks fantastic, but when you apply it and when you use simple common sense to it, it doesn't make any sense. Why should there be equal pay in professional wrestling when there are different types of jobs and different types of contracts? And the people that do not negotiate contracts are women. Women do not know how to negotiate a contract, or as well as they should know how to do it. You want to know what happens when you have like feminist stuff come in and teach women? It keeps us dumb. It keeps us in a box. But society will be like, girl, break that box. Girl, you better break that box and show the world who you're at. Like who you are, not who you at. Oh my God. But you get the idea. Society will be like, oh, you better, break out of that box, while feminists are telling you, no, you got to stay in the box because they want to take everything from you. You don't make enough money as a man. Men make more money and blah, blah, blah. And like, I just basically break down all the stupidity and all the lies and all the myths that they teach women. You know what we should be teaching women? How to invest, how to save money, how to not get your nails done all the time, how not to get your hair done all the time, how not to get like all of the convenience things that you get. And by the way, men made all the convenient thing that you get. Lower down lifestyles and stuff like that. Tell women, to invest in like real estate, start with Airbnb, do this business, that business. Because, if you really truly think that you make less than a guy, why not save your money? Why not put it in a savings? Why do you need a new pair of heels? Why do you need a new pair of dress every time that you're gonna go out for like Sunday brunch like 2 times out of the month? Why do you need to try to impress the other ladies or impress a man when you could just be like, I'm gonna go out in sweatpants and a shirt and a bra and some sneakers. Um, you know, Trade in some stuff. You don't have to always be the hyper feminine woman, because like anybody can be anything in a way, to like a certain degree. But to tell women that like, oh, equal pay this, equal pay that, how do you get equal pay within professional wrestling? How does that happen, especially when there's royalties? And you can't have royalties be the same across the board. If you guys don't know, royalties comes from, like, let's say that for the video game WWE 2K or whatever year, like 25, 26, when that comes out, right? The sales across that, the royalties go to the wrestlers because of the likenesses. Whenever somebody goes on WWEshop.com and they buy merchandise from a particular wrestler, if they buy like a quantity of like 20 shirts, the amount of those royalties go to that wrestler, which may different from like a different wrestler. So how do you cap off equal pay? And when we say equal pay, that means that every single industry that has ever been created, man-made, created from everything that we could think of, everybody gets a cap. So if you happen to do overtime, you're not going to see that extra money. Equal pay has people become lazy because there's no incentive to work a little bit harder for your money. There's no incentive to get a little bit extra if you need a little bit extra, because like one of the bills you need to pay just went up, or your rent just went up. So if we ended up having a society where there is equal pay, right? Does that mean that, like, if the rent goes up, what happens? Because if it's equal pay and myself and my neighbor has to have the same amount of money coming in on our checks, and it cannot be $1 more, $1 less, it cannot be 1 penny more, 1 penny less, because if it is, then that's not equal pay. So if me and my neighbor get the same amount of money, but the landlord decides to raise the rent, what happens? So what is up with this equal pay nonsense? It does not make sense. You cannot do equal pay in professional wrestling because, again, there are different hierarchies, there are different contracts, people negotiate stuff. I even used the example in the podcast episode about, like, so if Roman Reigns makes $1 million a year, does that mean that the brand new indie star who happens to be a female that just got out of like wrestling school, does she need to be making $1 million a year? These are the questions that, like, I'm asking about equal pay. Now, when it comes to equal opportunity, I don't believe in that because, again, what I do for my work and my content is not the same thing of like somebody else. We're not going to do the same thing. If we have an equal opportunity, it's going to be boring. There's no competition. There's no like, oh, I got that opportunity. The opportunities that I get are not meant for somebody else. And that is totally okay. It's not meant for them. It's fine. They'll get their own opportunities. They'll make their own like opportunities happen the same way that I make my own opportunities happen whenever I work with MOW. If I know that they need me somewhere, but no one has thought about, where they need me, I will bring it up to them and be like, hey, I could be here because of X, Y, and Z, and I know you don't have anybody there. I could be there. I could make my own opportunity. And because I make my own opportunity, why does the person next to me get to have that same opportunity? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You cannot get equal opportunity in professional wrestling because every story is different, every person is different, every like situation is different. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So if, like, one of the wrestlers get a title match opportunity, does that mean that like the person sitting in catering also gets a title opportunity at the same time as a number one contender? Like, I don't understand that. I really don't. What does it truly mean to have equal opportunity in wrestling as a woman? And why would you want to take spots from other people, especially other men that gave you the space to branch out and do what you need to do? You know, it's a story. It's an event. Imagine if, like, you know, for equal opportunity, that like everybody has to be doing the same thing because it has to be equal across the board. That means that like men can't get more than the women and the women can't get more than the men because it has to be equal. Equal means equal. It doesn't just mean like the women and only the women is equal. That doesn't make any sense. And then the last point for that one was equal TV time. You can't do that in the world of TV, and you can't do that out in the indies and in your local wrestling promotion. You can't do that. You can't do equal TV time because that doesn't make any sense. We know that TV, whether we want to say it's dying or not, that has nothing to do with this conversation. But TV has ads. Companies buy these ads. So basically, your consumption of wrestling for like Monday Night Raw is like 2 hours and 30 minutes, or like even a little bit less because they have the paid ads. The same thing with SmackDown, like 2 hours and 30 minutes. Because of the ad space. So how is everybody going to have equal TV time if we have to think about ads, if you have to think about sticking to your times, which by the way, this is why, my experience comes into this conversation because everybody on the indies is told stick to your time. You have a 15-minute match that includes both entrances, and then at the end of the match we might have a run-in, so that's a little bit of a time, but like you have a 15-minute match. You got to stick to your times. You have a 2-minute promo to do. You got to stick to your time. You got to stick to your time. So how can everybody have equal TV time? So if the men in WWE have a 20-minute promo with all the excitement, all the drama and everything, and then we give a 20-minute promo to the women and it doesn't deliver, so then who is at fault? This is why we can't have fake activists in wrestling perpetuating the idea of like selling equality to women and having women, rather than wrestling fans or wrestlers, repeat the bullshit. Because when you break it down like that and when you basically open it up to see the bigger picture of like, all right, well then tell me how all these things work, it doesn't work. And it's okay because wrestling is not meant to be this perfect utopia that these young people want it to be, that these activists want it to be. And we really got to stop being an activist. We got to start telling the truth to women, and we got to start thanking men. Because if you're not going to be thanking men, men are going to be so lonely. And then you're going to be like, why can't I find a good guy? Which has been happening. And then, the men that don't get thanked, they're just gonna form brotherhoods, and be like, nah, women need to stay out because women want everything and want their cake and eat it too. And I say this as a woman as well. And I'm still waiting to get called to pick me because I know that like this stuff people do not agree with, and it's totally okay if you don't agree with it. This is just my experiences, my observations, and it's time for somebody to really talk about it and be a voice about it and like really give this perspective. But I know that like because this isn't drama, because this isn't what's popular or whatever, like no one's really gonna give a shit about it. But I give a shit about it. And I give a shit about it because I basically lost a friend. And that shit fucking hurts. Because you know, bots and burners, I can basically brush it off, block them, whatever, they can say whatever the fuck they want to me, they could weaponize whatever the fuck they want to me. But when you've put over somebody and it gets a little bit weaponized against you and gets pushed back and gets like, a backhanded compliment, rather than being like, oh, I can understand from your perspective because you worked in the business. But then to tell me that thanking men for crumbs is silly, just to score brownie points with all the feminists that if they wanted a baby, they would basically happily, go fuck a man and get a baby and be a hypocrite in their whole feminist way. It's kind of like a little jarring. It really is. Because that's really silly, I guess, to really say thanking a man for crumbs is silly when it's not crumbs, when men really moved over for us to shine. And just to wrap this up, that women have been in wrestling since the 1920s, but no young person today in 2025 is going to do that research because, again, feminism keeps you dumb, ladies. It keeps you dumb. So, basically, yeah. So, women were in wrestling since the 1920s. And they are trailblazers, but we don't talk about them enough. We talk about the very popular ones, which is cool. It's awesome, but throughout the eras, they were managers, valets, wrestlers. At the time, there really wasn't a market for women's wrestling. It was nice to have them there to give them that shared space. And we say thank you, women, as well, that paved the way for other women in wrestling. And then after that, we got to the bra and panty era, we got to the mud shows, we got to the diva search, and then we got a whole new leaf of women wrestlers where now they wrestle, and look how far that came, and look how that happened, look how that developed because men gave us the space because they believed in us, the same way that a good woman believes in a man to make sure that that man can achieve their dreams. And if you're not pushing or nagging the man that you think that can achieve their dreams, you're not doing it right. Because a little bit of nagging and a little bit of like love and tough love goes a long way for both sexes. Both sexes, we are a team. We are a unit. It is not one over the other. We both need each other in different types of ways, different types of capacities. So, getting told that in a group chat really fucking hurts. But yeah, let me just wrap this up by saying stop selling equality to women, give them the truth, and thank men. So thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to be alongside you guys in professional wrestling. I am always thankful for all of the opportunities that I get, and I love sharing a locker room, whether it's men, women, or just women. I love what I do in professional wrestling, and I will always stand by this.